Chapter 1. The Call of the Lost. The rescue mission to Draconis IV had been dispatched with extreme urgency. The planet, a strategic terraforming colony lost in the vastness of space for more than 200 years, had suddenly disappeared from the Intergalactic Federation's radar. Commander Leonardo Hauser was assigned to lead the starship Astra, one of the most advanced vessels in the fleet, carrying an elite crew composed of scientists, engineers, and alien specialists. They were prepared for the worst, though everyone hoped it would be a simple recovery mission. After weeks traveling through silent, empty space, the Astra finally entered orbit around Draconis IV. The planet appeared untouched, but something about it felt wrong. The team was preparing for their first descent to the surface when an unusual signal was detected. The ship's sensors were unable to establish direct communication with the planet's surface. The emergency contact signal, which should have automatically reactivated, never appeared. "This isn't right," said Dr. Clara Voss, the mission's chief scientist, while studying the monitors. She was a woman with a serious expression, her silver hair revealing years of experience in extreme exploration missions. "None of this is normal. If the colony were functioning, we would have received some kind of response by now." Hauser remained silent for a moment. The Astra had been designed for deep space missions, capable of handling almost any unforeseen situation. But this silence, this void of communication, was unusual even for the most advanced ship in the fleet. External probes began sending distorted images of the planet. Instead of the familiar landscape of a thriving colony, Draconis IV was shrouded in a dense mist, as if the planet were waiting, anticipating something. "We'll have to make a forced landing," Hauser declared, his voice firm and leaving no room for doubt. "Prepare yourselves." The crew began preparing for descent, aware that whatever awaited them beneath the atmosphere could be something completely unknown. As the ship descended toward the surface, atmospheric control behaved abnormally. The gravitational field seemed to fluctuate constantly, creating a growing sense of disorientation. The tension aboard the Astra was palpable. The ship landed smoothly, but the silence still hung heavy in the air. The Astra's doors opened, and the team stepped out, their suits adapted for any environmental condition. Draconis IV appeared desolate. The ground was covered in a thin layer of dust, and the colony's structures still stood, but they were empty. The streets were deserted, and there were no signs of life. Everything had been abandoned, as if time itself had stopped. "This is impossible," murmured Captain James Wiles, the security officer, as he scanned the surroundings. "If the colony was evacuated, where are the escape ships? Where are the emergency pods?" Clara Voss looked around with suspicion. She knew something was wrong. The colony should have been operational, or at least there should have been some sign of activity, but there was nothing. The city seemed frozen in time. They walked down the main avenue, where the facades of the buildings remained intact but lifeless. There were no sounds, no movement, not even animals. As they reached the center of the city, a gigantic structure rose in the distance, the Alpha Research Center, the heart of the colony. The team knew the facility housed the primary experiments conducted there, including the study of a recently discovered alien organism. No one knew exactly what had been done, but rumors suggested the experiment might have led to the colony's downfall. "I don't like this," Wiles said, feeling the tension rise. "Where are the bodies? Where are the survivors?" Clara didn't answer, but her expression said everything. She knew they were about to discover far more than they had imagined, and perhaps something that not even the Astra could face. Chapter 2. The Mystery of the Dead World. The planet Draconis IV stretched before the Astra, wrapped in a thick layer of fog that seemed to swallow the light of the stars. The team had landed on the surface, but something about the environment felt wrong. The dense mist, which had not been detected in the initial scans, appeared to cover the entire area, creating a suffocating sensation. Commander Leonardo Hauser observed the scene carefully. It was as if the planet were trapped inside a prison of silence. "Let's move forward," Hauser ordered, trying to maintain his composure. The mission was far from simple, but he knew there was no turning back now. "Follow me and maintain constant contact." The rescue team prepared to investigate the ruins of the colony, with field equipment and communicators ready. The environment felt hostile and lifeless. Even with their suits on, it was possible to feel the weight of the desolation that dominated the planet. Dr. Clara Voss, the mission's chief scientist, was especially attentive, her eyes capturing every detail of the surrounding structures. What had happened here, she wondered. "Something isn't right," Clara said quietly but firmly. "The streets are completely empty, but the buildings show no signs of recent abandonment. There are no bodies, no signs of destruction." What intrigued them the most was that the colony appeared to be in perfect condition, without any evidence of war or natural disaster. There were no wrecked ships or destroyed equipment, something unusual for a colony that, according to records, should have been evacuated in an emergency. The streets were immaculate, with no signs of people or even animals. Everything seemed to be in place, yet at the same time, everything felt deeply empty. As they moved through the city, Commander Hauser and his team headed toward the Alpha Research Center, where most of the colony's scientific studies had taken place. They knew the answers to the mystery might lie there. As they approached the main structure, Clara stopped for a moment and looked around with concern. I shouldn't have brought you here, Clara said, her voice trembling. I was responsible for the experiments. I was the one who suggested we use that alien life form. If something went wrong, it's my fault. Hauser stepped closer, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. We're here to understand what happened, Clara. We're not here to blame you, but we need to know the truth. Only then can we stop something like this from happening again. Clara nodded, but her face was marked by guilt and fear. They had reached the research center, an imposing structure made of metal and crystal, with large shattered windows but doors still intact. The facade, although clean, was covered with a layer of dust. It seemed no one had entered for a very long time. When the team stepped inside, the smell of stagnation filled the air, sending a chill down their spines. Prepare the analysis equipment, Hauser ordered. Let's look for any sign of recent activity. As they advanced through the research center, Clara guided the team through the corridors. She stopped in front of a sealed security door, her expression dark. This is the area where the experiments with the alien life form took place. I don't know what we'll find inside, but we need to open it. We'll do this carefully, Hauser said, gesturing to Wiles, the security officer, to take the lead. Wiles activated the door's opening mechanism with a security key, and after a few seconds the door slowly slid open, revealing a laboratory room. Inside were advanced instruments, tubes, and preserved samples, but no signs of life. What caught everyone's attention was a massive glass capsule in the center of the room. Inside it was a viscous, greenish, glowing substance that seemed to pulse slightly as if it had a life of its own. Clara approached the capsule cautiously, her eyes fixed on the strange material. This is what we brought from the neighboring planet. The creature, it's not just an organism. It has consciousness, its own intelligence, Clara explained, her voice filled with tension. We studied it and tried to use it to manipulate energy sources, but it seemed to adapt much faster than any of us expected. The tension in the room grew, and the team members began to realize they were facing something far greater than they had imagined. The alien substance inside the capsule seemed to breathe, and something within its composition began to move. We'd better seal this again, Wiles suggested, eyeing the capsule with suspicion. I don't like what I'm seeing. Clara stepped back slowly, her expression dark. We can't just close it now. Now that it's here, the creature, it's waking up. Chapter 3. The Encounter with Clara. The Alpha Research Center was completely silent. The alien capsule in the center of the room pulsed with a soft, hypnotic light, and the team watched cautiously, trying to understand what was happening there. Clara Voss had led them to that point, but now she seemed distant, as if a shadow were hanging over her. Something in her gaze, once focused and determined, was broken. Clara, Commander Leonardo Hauser began, his voice serious as he tried to get the scientist's attention. You said this could be controlled. What exactly is happening here? Clara took a step toward the capsule as if drawn by an invisible force. Her eyes were fixed on the alien substance inside it. I didn't know it would evolve like this, she said, her voice filled with regret. When we began the experiments, it was just a simple life form without much intelligence. The idea was to use its biotechnology to create a new clean energy source for the colony. But something went wrong. Hauser frowned, still not fully understanding what she meant. What do you mean, something went wrong? What happened to the colonists? Why was communication lost? Clara slowly turned to him, her face marked with guilt. The creature, it started to change. Not only physically, it began influencing the colonists' minds. They became obsessed, aggressive, and eventually, they lost their own identities. Some began merging with the substance, transforming into something that was no longer human. A chill ran down the commander's spine. He had not been prepared to hear that, and the weight of Clara's words seemed to echo through the room like a distant tremor. You're saying they became part of the creature? Clara nodded, the horror on her face unmistakable now. Yes, they were trying to integrate with it, searching for greater power. By the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. I tried to stop the experiment, but the alien organism had already spread throughout the colony. When everyone was transformed, that's when I lost contact. Before the darkness consumed everything, I tried to escape, but I was the only one who survived. Hauser stepped closer to Clara, his eyes locked on hers. You said you tried to escape, but how did you survive? What kept it away from you? I don't know, Clara said, her hands trembling. But something inside me resisted. The creature couldn't control me the way it did the others. I remained in a state of induced sleep inside a cryogenic capsule until the Astra arrived. But even now I can feel it still there inside my mind. It never left. The commander glanced at the rest of the team, who looked stunned by Clara's words. Security Officer James Wiles was on full alert, his hands resting on his weapon while his eyes scanned every corner of the room as if the very structure might collapse around them. "So that means the colonists aren't dead, right?" Wiles asked, his voice rough. "They're just in some kind of mental state?" "Yes," Clara replied, almost whispering. "And they're not alone. The creature, whatever it is controlling their minds, and if I'm right, it could do the same to any of us if we're exposed for too long." The tension in the room rose sharply. Every member of the team knew time was running out. The longer they stayed on that planet, the greater the chance they would fall under the same influence that had taken the colonists. But they also knew they needed to understand more about the creature's nature if they wanted any chance of survival. "We need to go to the research core," Clara Hauser said firmly. "There are more answers there. You're with us, right?" Clara hesitated for a moment, her gaze still distant. "Yes, but I can't go alone. I'll need your help. If the creature tries to control us, we'd better have a contingency plan." The commander nodded and looked at the rest of the team. "Then that's it. We're heading to the research core, and we must be ready for whatever we find. If the creature tries to infiltrate our minds, don't hesitate to act." With heavy hearts and uneasy minds, the team prepared for the next phase of the mission. They knew they were stepping into unknown territory, where the laws of physics, biology, and even the mind could be twisted in ways they could barely understand. And the worst part of all was this: perhaps they didn't even realize that they had already been touched by the creature's influence. Chapter 4: The First Experiment. The team prepared to explore the colony's research core, where the answers to what had happened might be hidden. While the Astra remained stationed in distant orbit around Draconis IV, the team led by Commander Leonardo Hauser began venturing deeper into the facilities that once housed the scientific heart of the colony. "Let's stay calm and move in formation," Hauser said, his voice firm but filled with growing tension. "Clara, you know the path to the research core. We need to move fast. Whatever is waiting for us there, we have to be ready." Clara, who had remained silent during the journey, nodded slowly. Her eyes looked distant, as if she were still trying to comprehend the consequences of what had happened in the colony. She knew this would not simply be a recovery mission, it would be a fight for survival. They moved through the dark, silent corridors of the Alpha Research Center. The metallic walls were covered with signs of corrosion, and although everything seemed intact at first glance, the air carried an unsettling feeling. Emergency lights flickered intermittently, as if the building itself were struggling to endure whatever had happened there. "We're close," Clara said, stopping in front of a reinforced door. She touched a control panel, and the door opened with a metallic creak, revealing an enormous laboratory filled with advanced research equipment. Inside the room, the monitors were still active, displaying incomplete graphs and data, but there were no signs of life. The environment was filled with a sense of abandonment, but also with something else, something that should not have been there. In the center of the room, on an elevated platform, stood a large glass tank containing a greenish, viscous substance that seemed to be moving. The scientists had called it Biological Entity, K-22, but Clara knew that in truth, there was no real way to understand it. "Is this the research core?" Captain James Wiles asked, looking around suspiciously. "Yes, this was the center of everything," Clara replied quietly. "This is where we began our experiments. The objective was simple, to use this creature to create an unexplored energy source. But it began evolving in unexpected ways." Hauser stepped closer to the tank, observing the alien substance carefully. It seemed to pulse, as if it were alive, and an uneasy sensation spread through him. It was as if he could feel something, a presence emanating from the substance itself. "How did you ever think this was safe?" Wiles demanded, anger in his voice. "If it was already developing like this, why didn't you stop sooner?" Clara closed her eyes, as if reliving the most difficult moments of her life. "We thought we could control it, that it could be useful for humanity, but it changed. We didn't know what we were doing. It was something we couldn't predict. When it started altering the colonists' behavior, it was already too late." Hauser turned toward her, his expression serious. "You mentioned the creature alters people's minds. Are you saying this substance in the tank could do the same to any of us?" "Yes," Clara confirmed darkly. "It influences minds, manipulates emotions and thoughts, creating a kind of telepathic connection. When the colonists got too close, they couldn't resist anymore. They merged with it. And I can't guarantee that we're safe." The commander paused for a moment, considering the gravity of the situation. They were dealing with a life form capable of controlling minds, and the creature still seemed present, even in its contained state. It was as if it were waiting, watching. We need to destroy this, Hauser said firmly, before it spreads any further. If this reaches the rest of the galaxy, it will be the end. Clara shook her head almost in despair. It won't be that simple. If we try to destroy the creature abruptly, the reaction could be unpredictable. We need to deactivate the energy source that keeps the substance alive and contained. Otherwise, we risk unleashing something even more dangerous. Wiles frowned suspiciously. So what do you suggest? There's a control station on the deepest level of the research center, Clara explained hesitantly. From there we can access the containment system and shut down the energy source. But believe me, it won't be easy. And it's possible the creature is already monitoring us. Hauser looked at his team. Then that's our plan. We're heading to the control station. Follow Clara's instructions and stay calm. The objective is to deactivate the system and, if necessary, destroy anything that tries to stop us. As they prepared to descend into the deepest levels of the research center, an unusual sense of dread began to grow inside Hauser. He felt as if he were about to unleash something he could never control, and once again a single question echoed through his mind. Was it already too late to save the galaxy?